and welcome our blog viewers to RTD's News English Edition. Tonight, as usual, we begin our news with the major highlights. Opening of the 76th session of the UPA Executive Committee, Djibouti African Parliamentarian Union. In the international scene, COVID-19 Australia, Sydney comes out of almost 4 months of confinement. Those were the major top highlights. Welcome back to our newsroom, our blog viewers. The 76th session of the Executive Committee and the 42nd Conference of the African Union Parliamentary Union opened today in Djibouti, Palace Kempinski. This session was chaired by the President of the Executive Committee of the African Parliamentary Union and President of the National Assembly, Mr. Mohammed Ali Hamad, and the Secretary General of the African Parliamentary Union. More than 150 African parliamentarians from about 20 countries of the continent took part in the 76th session of the Executive Committee and the 42nd Conference of the African Parliamentary Union. The holding and organization of this session comes in a particular context marked by the global health crisis of COVID-19. In his opening speech, the President of the Executive Committee of the African Parliamentary Union and President of the National Assembly, Mr. Mohammed Ali Hamad, has first of all warmly welcomed the members of delegations who take part in this statutory meeting of our continental parliamentary institutions. He said, and I quote, "We wanted to renew the regularity of our meetings and break with the lethargy in which the pandemic has plunged us," said President Mohammed Ali Hamad. Continuing his speech, the President stressed the expected objective of the 76th session of the Executive Committee, which is to review the implementation of the recommendations adopted at the previous conference, the annual work program, as well as the financial issues of our Union, the preparation of the 43rd conference that will follow this session. The President of the National Assembly, Mr. Mohammed Ali Hamad, who also the President of the Executive Committee of the African Parliamentary Union, said he was convinced that this work could lead to the recommendations and relevant resolutions that could contribute to the action of development and peace building. In closing his remarks, President Mohammed Ali Hamad thanked the Executive Committee for the confidence placed in the Republic of Djibouti to host these sessions of the African Parliamentary Union before wishing them full success for this work. As every year, the national awareness campaign entitled Pink October, dedicated to the prevention of female genital cancers, was launched at the Kempinski Palace Hotel under the patronage of the Minister of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble. Inscribed in the fight against breast and uterine cancers, the Pink October campaign is initiated by the National Center of Reference in Reproductive Health, Husseina, which benefits from the support and collaboration of both UNFD and UNFPA. The launching ceremony of the campaign mobilized many actors of the civil society, including the Vice President of UNFD, Mrs. Hasna Hamad Bilil, as well as several representatives of the United Nations agencies, such as the representative of UNFPA, Mrs. Aisha Ibrahim, the representative of UNICEF, Mrs. Melva Johnson, the representative of WHO, Dr. Rehendley van de Vert, and the representative of, after the brief presentation of the director of the Husseina Center, Mrs. Makou Mahmoud Ali, the UNFPA representative assured of the constant support of our organization to support this national screening campaign for female genital cancers. In her speech, the Vice President of UNFD, Mrs. Hasna Hamad Bilil, recalled the crucial role and involvement of civil society in this fight against female genital cancers, particularly through the organization of a large pink walk in Djibouti. In his speech also, the Minister of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble, raised the need for a national reflection around the prevention of genital cancers in this health screening campaign. The Minister of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble, visited yesterday the headquarters of UNFD, the oldest association in Djibouti, which hosted the mobile vaccination team to immunize its staff and volunteers against COVID-19. Indeed, the staff of the national NGO received in turn their dose by the mobile vaccination team. UNFD officials and managers led the way by vaccinating themselves to encourage and sensitize their staff for individual and collective immunization. The Minister of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble, welcomed the massive participation of the staff of the first national NGO to receive their doses of anti-COVID vaccine at their headquarters. The Secretary General of the Ministry of National Education and Vocational Training, Mr. Mohammed Abdullah Mahyoub, led this morning a meeting of the Joint Technical Committee between the MEMFOP, the Ministry of Budget, and the Ministry of Labor in charge of formalization and social protection. The meeting was attended by the Director General, Mr. Abdul Qadir Hamad, the Secretary General of the National Commission of UNESCO, Mr. Muhammad Musa, the Inspector General of General Education, Mrs. Muna Ismail Abdul, as well as delegates from the Ministry of Budget and Labor. Note that this meeting is part of the National Week of the Teacher and aims to study and make a brief presentation of the national policy of teachers between these parties. In this working meeting, the Joint Technical Community shared the ways and means in the implementation and perspective of the national teacher policy. The decentralized service of the city of Obokh in the Ministry of Women and Family received this Sunday, October 10, 2021, the visit of their minister, Mrs. Muna Usman Adan. At the head of an important delegation composed of senior officials of our institution and parliamentarians of the region, Mrs. Muna was welcomed with all honors by the authorities of the region, namely the staff of the prefecture and the regional council. After the traditional stop at the prefecture, the minister went to the headquarters of the regional council, where a welcoming hedge of folklore awaited her. It is surrounded by her delegation that she joined the assembly of Obokh people who were waiting for her. After having followed the projections of the missions and prerogatives of the ministry, Mrs. Muna then exchanged at length with the population of Hayu on the progress of the achievements of the MFF in the region, but also the difficulties encountered and the suggestions to remedy them. The minister then made a visit to the local craft of the winner of the prize of the Head of State 2021. She did not fail to congratulate for having used wisely his prize by participating in the economy of his region through a store. By way of thanks, the winner offered gifts to the minister who had done her shopping beforehand. And to close the visit, Mrs. Muna and her delegation went to the awakening centers of Obokh to inquire about their conditions. As part of his assumptions of duty, the acting coordinator of the United Nations system in Djibouti, Mr. Eric Overfest, was received by the Minister of Social Affairs and Solidarity, Mrs. Ulufa Ismail Abdo, on Sunday, October 10th in her cabinet. Present at this meeting, the close collaborators of the minister, who briefly congratulated the coordinator to her appointment to this department, with which she has a long and fruitful partnership. Furthermore, the minister was keen to present the orientations of her department, which aim to eradicate poverty in the Republic of Djibouti through various social programs. By highlighting the challenge that her ministry intends to undertake, putting forward elements of partnership between the various UN agencies, the minister wanted to promote the social and economic policy, which is the priority of the President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh. The Ambassador of Extraordinary and Parliamentary of the Republic of Djibouti to the United Arab Emirates, His Excellency Mr. Musa Mohammed Ahmed, presented his credentials to the Vice President, Prime Minister, and Minister of Defense, His Highness Sheikh Mahmoud bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Taking part in the credential presentation ceremony held at the Expo 2020 Center in Dubai, where His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Crown Prince of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Maktoum bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Finance and Deputy Ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Saif bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Interior, His Highness Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Presidential Affairs, and His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperations, were present. Early in the day of Monday, October 11, 2021, the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, made an inspection visit to Boli in Lake Asal in the region of Tajorra, which is under the command of the Tajorian Inter-Arms Regiment, which is also known as Riyadh, commanded by Colonel Ali Shehim Dawood. The purpose of this inspection is to acquire the security situation of this region. Indeed, the Inter-Arms Regiment of Tajorra is deployed for 10 months on the ground to carry out missions of sweeping and normalization in search of criminals whose aim is to destabilize the country by unhealthy acts and to preserve the sovereignty of the country and the protection of our fellow citizens. Thus, this regiment, supported by 2 companies of the Rapid Action Force, an elite unit, and 2 paramilitary companies on the National Police, crisscrosses all the corners of the northern region, the most remote and difficult to access areas, to carry out their assigned missions. In his trip, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim was accompanied by Colonel Ibrahim Ilmi Ghaib, Acting Chief of Staff of the National Gendarmerie, Colonel Abdurrahman Ali, Acting Director General of the National Police, Colonel Mahmoud Ilmi, Head of the Operations Division. At the end of the review of the troops, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, addresses the troop. The Chief of Staff praised the strong, commendable actions of these soldiers engaged in combining missions, galvanizing them further. In his message, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim indicated that these combining and nomadic missions are aimed at neutralizing and eradicating criminals who are desperately trying to destabilize the country through sabotage actions. General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim stressed that this mission of any military is to protect Djibouti, Djiboutians and national interests in the face of future conflicts. Let us note that our military work in close collaboration with the regional authorities and the civilian population, especially in difficult times, within the framework of humanitarian assistance, aid to the population, transformation of civilians, and many other areas. In the meantime, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, accompanied by his delegation composed of Colonel Ibrahim Elmi Ghaib, Acting Chief of Staff of the National Gendarmerie, Colonel Abdurrahman Ali, Director General of the National Police by interim, Colonel Muhammad Elmi, Head of the Operation Division, went to Lak Asar, where a company of the Rapid Action Force and a parliamentary company of the National Police awaited them. Under the orders of Colonel Ibrahim Ali Farah, Chief of Staff of the Rapid Action Force, the Chief of Staff undertook a review of the troops after getting acquainted with the security situation of the sector. General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, congratulating the efforts made by his soldiers, sent the same message of rigor, discipline, and self-sacrifice in the accomplishments of the missions assigned to them. The same guy, galvanizing his troops, told them that he also always been able to count on his valiant men. At the end of the review of the troops, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, addressed the troops. The Chief of Staff praised the strong commendable actions of these soldiers, engaged in combining missions, galvanizing them further. In his message, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim indicated that these combining and nomadic missions are aimed at neutralizing and eradicating the criminals who are desperately trying to destabilize the country through sabotage actions. General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim stressed that the mission of any military is to protect Djibouti, Djiboutians, and national interests in the face of future conflicts. Let us note that our military working class collaboration with the regional authorities and the civilian populations, especially in difficult times, in the framework of humanitarian assistance, aid to the populations, transportation of civilians, and many other areas. Following a crisp check of information, the police officers of the Hodam police station opened an investigation to find all the people involved in this series of robberies that took place in several houses located at their districts. Indeed, the thieves entered the houses in the evening between 2:30 and 5 a.m. using a ladder and took everything they found on their way. A dozen houses located in the area of Barwako were robbed. The suspects who has been established the prices modus operandi stole people's belongings and sold them on the black market. During their night maneuvers, the thieves have thus put their hands on 90 boxes of tiles, 9 aluminum windows, 5 wooden doors, dozens of telephones, a flat screen, a generator, 2 laptops, a computer with its keyboard and mouse. The police also arrested several offenses who were responsible for liquidating the stolen equipment on the black market. The accused were arrested and referred to the prosecutor's office. Moving on to Australia, the inhabitants of Sydney came on Monday on almost 4 months of a strict confinement decrease in the biggest city of Australia to stop the epidemic of COVID-19. In the city of 5 billion inhabitants, a confinement had been decided in the summer to prevent the spread of the Delta variant of the coronavirus, highly contagious. But this, our beloved viewers, we conclude this edition. Thank you for joining us and make sure to tune in later for more. Have a wonderful evening and thank you.